Hey folks, for some reason none of the music was going through, I think. So whatever, we got some technical hiccups coming through here. It's fine. As long as you guys can see and hear me, then we'll roll with it and we'll have a good time. I may have some other artists and authors dropping in on the stream as we go along. So I want to talk today about social media and the death of social media. That is the social part of social media. So let me there's I think 5 big areas that I actually want to cover here, which is going to be the core mission and service that is social media, all the different versions of social media, whether you're looking at Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Those are the big 3, and I'll talk about some of the others kind of tangentially, but those are the 3 that I think we should really be concerned with, especially if you are a free thinker or just anybody that is not, not on the left. So anybody who's let's say to the right of say Chairman Mao. Anybody that's to the right of Engels should be concerned about what I'm going to talk about today. But I think normies should actually be concerned too, and that's the other things that I'm going to talk about. So number 1 is the core mission and service. Number 2, who is the product, and the problem with this view of the user as the product, or the user as what's for sale. I'll talk a little bit about that. Number 3, some issues on technical monopoly. I've addressed these in the past. It's good to talk about them again. Number 4 is hostile occupation and what creators should do, what they ought to do. And number 5 is what normies should do, because normies are very important. Oh, I think bar 1 dropped in. How you doing? Yeah, I can hear you. I'm going to double check that it's actually, I don't think it's actually showing up on my streaming software for some reason. So no one may be able to hear you on the stream. So let me see if I can actually fix that a little bit here. And then I will... All right. Yeah, the right now the problem is that my desktop audio is not coming through my streaming software at all. So I'm not sure why that's there. Can you try talking again?
Yeah, I'll try talk.
Oh, there we go. So this is gonna I'm gonna have to abandon the comfortable headphones where I can hear my voice, and we'll go to the cans, which are total sound isolating headphones. Can you talk again?
Yeah, I'll talk again if that's good.
Okay, quick plug. You wanna plug your
Kickstarter? Yeah, sure. My latest project is Dr. Ativism's Horrible Halloween Haunt Coloring Book, Volume 1.
So yeah, this is a Halloween coloring book. I'll try to pull a link up as we're going here. It's actually a really cool idea, I think. I actually think coloring books are a fun idea, and my kids like them. We actually got a giant cardboard submarine. My wife bought it for the lockdown, so they had something to do. And they spent weeks coloring this giant cardboard submarine and then playing in it.
So you're actually okay, so a giant cardboard cutout plaything submarine though?
Yeah.
And I can't remember where I found this online, but somebody was I think it was somebody in the Pulp Rev group. I think because we were talking about old comics and stuff, or one of the Facebook groups that cover these things, because there used to be the kids, you can get a real submarine or a spaceship and stuff, and it was these cardboard color these playthings.
Yeah.
But they're always advertised as be your own submarine commander in the old comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So these products I don't think ever went away.
Yeah. So it comes at a couple of sheets of cardboard, and you stick them together, and it makes a little submarine that the kids can get in, and perfect for kids that are 4 or 5, because they could pick it up, move it around, and go inside it. Do kind of stuff like that. Yeah, so I got a new AC. That's why I didn't stream yesterday, is that I was having split installed in this room. This room is horribly hot. I always get the hottest room in the house as my office, every place I've lived. Then it's just intolerably warm where I'm at. So it's 100 degrees outside, and I have a hot computer and a hot room. It means that if you guys look at past streams, you'll see me literally just sweat dripping off my face because it's so hot in here. So I'm got some money. I'm going to take care of this for good. And I think what put it over the edge was my mom gave me some money for it for my birthday to have this installed. But also, my wife may have to telecommute from this office during the regular year here, which means it's got to be a little bit more comfortable. Like, I'm okay with discomfort, but then it's like, there's no reason to have anybody who's going to use the room ever. If it's got like 100% uptime, it needs to be comfortable to sit in. So yep, Halloween coloring book. I'll find a link to that in just a minute here.
I'll try to post. I'll post a link to in the Twitter.
Okay.
I'll repost that link. But if you look on it's a Kickstarter link, of course, and it's the Horrible Halloween Haunt coloring book. And that's the thing; it's not just Halloween; it is haunted attractions. So I've seen like there's horror coloring books, but usually that is people that have like, here's a drawing of Freddy, here's a drawing of Jason, here's a drawing of Leatherface, all unlicensed. And I was going to avoid that. I knew I was going to avoid that. But then there's also like a lot of Halloween ones where here's a page with a pumpkin and a cat on a fence post or something. I want to do something more adult, more complex. You know, those adult coloring books where it's like all these little fiddly bits and areas you can go into.
Yeah.
So these are really detailed scenes. And about the haunted attraction industry. So like you're going into a Gothic mansion kind of set. You're going into a farm haunt where there's even like a 3-page sequence of people going on a hayride.
Yeah, so I'm looking at some of the art right now. All right, so that looks like a bit of fun there. Let's go ahead and I want to jump into talking about these points. I'm going to go over 5 different areas I want to talk about with the death of social media, and you can have a chat with me about them. So number 1 is the core mission and its service. Number 2 is who the product is and the problem with viewing the customer as the product. And I could dig into that and make some definitions. Number 3 is technical monopoly, just something worth revisiting. Number 4, hostile occupation and what creators ought to do with social media. And number 5 is what should normies do. And I'm actually going to be, my personal messaging is basically things that are going to go against what is best for me as a creator, but that doesn't matter. I care more about just telling it like it is, telling the truth. So let's start with the core mission and service. So one of the things about social media, why did everyone jump on social media 10 or 15 years ago? And the reason is because it was really useful. So MySpace was the first one I really remember, and that's like Internet 1.0 kind of social media. Required you to go and click on other people's little page, and that's how you could interact with them. That got quickly supplanted by Facebook, which was a superior product that put everybody's entries into like a feed that you could just see. And people loved Facebook because it was a really easy way to have low-level standard social connections with other people. So you could open it up and you'd see a chronological list of what your friends were doing and what they were posting and where they were at and what that was on their mind. And so people approached it in a very social way. They're like, I'm having a hamburger right now. Check out this hamburger. Like once people had cameras on their phones, it was like, here's a picture of this hamburger I'm eating. People food posted. I'm at this concert. I'm doing this. Here's some pictures from the wedding. That kind of stuff. Here's my kids. So Facebook was purely the way that we normally socially interact. But the product and its service, the product and its core mission has changed over the years, specifically with Facebook. Not as much with Twitter, but definitely it has with Twitter to a certain extent. As soon as they got rid of the chronological ordering, that's when you know that the core mission has actually been altered. The product is no longer meeting its initial standards. It's not doing what it's supposed to do from the get-go. So Facebook transformed from a platform where people were seeing what their friends were doing into a platform where people were basically being brainwashed. That's what it is. And so anybody that's still using Facebook, and I remember the come to Jesus moment, I guess, was right after Donald Trump was elected, where every single person on my Facebook feed was posting the exact same words, the same sentences, in the same order with the same word choice, like homophobic, xenophobic, Nazi bigot, like the same 5 words over and over again. I'm like, these people are literally brainwashed. There's no way you could have this outcome without some significant cognitive alteration from this service.
And I'd add,
yeah, go ahead.
Note how far off track Facebook and others of these pages went, because this used to be, so we had this microblogging version of social media, so you could quickly, like you mentioned, quickly upload your photos, quickly upload, and share to a group. So they didn't have to go instead and click on your blog site or your personal, like a live journal or something, or try to find your blogger or your actual .com website, so people could keep track of each other that way. And now, thanks to the popularity and how many people use it, and also because of interest, like, what do you like? Oh, I should talk about what I like, and you start clicking on these things that you like. Well, now, like if you click on the movie Aliens, every news story about the movie Aliens or the franchise Aliens, who's bought it, that's now getting shunted into your feed instead of your friends and family.
Yeah, and that's the core thing. So there's a couple problem areas with the core mission and service. Number one is, how do you make money? So if you're just showing people what they want to see, you can't make any money off that. You have to inject advertising into it. Advertising has to be injected into it. Otherwise, you have to charge people money for the service. So that's the first problem. How do you make money? Well, they show you things related to aliens because people are paying them to do so. And because I run a Facebook page, I know how this works. Basically, in order for me to even reach the people who liked my page, I have to pay Facebook money. But if I pay them more, I can pay them more money to reach more people who like things similar to what my page is or what I specify. So if somebody likes Michael Moorcock, they hit a like Michael Moorcock, I can target them with an ad for my book, which is like Michael Moorcock's books. And they're going to see a bunch of books related to Michael Moorcock books because we're paying Facebook to show it to them, instead of the stuff they actually want to see. Now, they may like my book, but the point is they didn't really want to see an ad for my book, did they? That's the thing that's there. How do they make money? They have to monetize it somehow, which means you have to disrupt the actual core product.
And now, are they even delivering on that? Because we know of Steven Crowder's problems with Facebook, where they were spending money on ads, and the ads themselves were not being shared. He was still getting throttled.
Yeah.
In fact, they're throttling the ads, so they're basically ripping him off.
Yeah, they take the money and then they don't show the content. Mm-hmm. And this is actually one of the problems with the opacity of Facebook, is you can never. They give you these breakdowns of how your ad did, but it's really hard to figure out exactly who saw that ad for how long and what they thought. You can't really break that stuff down very well. Trying to get click-throughs and stuff. It used to be a really cheap way to advertise. Now, I'm probably going to delete my Facebook. In fact, I plan to. And kind of what pushed it over the edge was my wife wanting to delete her Facebook. So she's deleting her Facebook. Why? She's like, every time I log on to Facebook, I feel bad. And I like the people in my life less. I do not enjoy seeing what my friends and family are posting. They're basically having 2 minutes of hate all 24 hours a day, all day long, right? So the 2 minutes of hate that's all it is. That's all the feed is now. So if you don't want to be a part of that, you have to stop using Facebook. And it's like, if I'm going to stop using it, I should delete it. And what I thought was, really, at a certain point, Facebook not only becomes a waste of your time, it actually becomes a liability. Because these people shooting this 2 minutes of hate, I realized like my friends list was full of people who hate me and want me dead. Because they're people I went to college with, and of course I have an arts degree. So they've been brainwashed to be so far on the left. Like we're not talking like normal boomer moderatism. I have an arts degree too, and I gotta tell you, you're like the only conservative or even moderate right winger in your class usually. Yeah, like 9 times out of 10, you're going to be the only guy. Yeah, the only people I still keep up with are like my Catholic and just really strong Christian friends I went to school with, and I wasn't even very religious. It's just they're the people who like, I guess, keep it on
remain consistent.
Yeah, they're not crazy,
as opposed to watching people go off the cliff.
Yeah,
with the acceleration of most because most progressivism is based on a fictional idea of what a utopia should be. So you're going to be constantly not good enough.
Yeah, that's another part of it too. So now this was actually the older criticism was, you're seeing a highlight feed of all the best moments of your friends' lives, and you're going to think that that's normal, and that's going to make you feel bad. Now it's really just, you don't even see that. You don't see the best of anything. You just see people angry and upset sharing Huffington Post articles. There's like nothing good on Facebook anymore, at least for me.
Like back in the Obama years, my mantra was to people like, just, hey, anything that any headline that you're reacting to, just give it a damn week and watch as it pans out to nothing.
Yes, I've said this before. Most news is actually false. And people are like, what? And I don't even mean the fake news thing where they like are presenting the facts in a way that confounds the reader and makes them think the opposite. But if you just wait a week, what they said a week ago is by definition not true.
Yeah, it just doesn't peter out as the warning, claw that they wanted a headline with a hue and cry to sell that newspaper back in the day, or nowadays it's just a click to the ad space. But often 9 times out of often as not, it was overblown. It peters out to, everything's still fine though. Or the initial impression of the event is 180 degrees reversed from the actuality of what happened.
Yeah, that's even if you're an honest reporter, this happens because you report the facts as you know them, as they're presented to you. So if you get a doctored video from somebody on the scene, then you just report on that video, and then the whole thing comes out later. Oh, you're missing the first half of the video, and maybe you have to issue a correction, but people don't ever see the correction. They see the initial story, they cement it in their minds as the truth, they have an emotional reaction to it, and then that emotional reaction just sticks through the rest of the cycle for it, and they can never be convinced that what they originally saw was something untrue. I remember somebody saying, I don't care what comes out about this Covington High School kid. He's a Nazi. And it's like, if you can honestly say that with a straight face, then you are technically insane.
Yeah,
you are technically insane if you say there is nothing that can come out. There's no information that can be presented to me that will make me change my opinion of what I initially saw. Then that you are insane.
2015, 2016, when the Jessica Jones TV show was on the air, or on the streaming, and Netflix, was that, were they on, or were they on, I don't know what they're on, but I don't really do the streaming. But David Tennant is playing this guy, right, who has a power that he can tell people to do stuff, and they do the stuff, right? And as a reaction to that character and that show, there was a huge discussion, multiple discussions on fan websites and fan media about quote-unquote gaslighting. But that was also kind of going on at the same time that the manosphere was on the rise too. And what I had noticed by 2016 is that most people had been inoculated because the term gaslighting and this forced popularity of this term and the concept through social media, that they were now inoculated against any new information coming in.
Yeah.
You couldn't contradict a person's presuppositions given to them by a headline that was from their base camp.
Yeah, and I've documented this. I call it the fake news cycle, and there's kind of 5 things. So it's all about provoking an initial emotional response, and all of the stuff that happens afterwards, people filter out a lot of. They forget things because they don't have an impact on their life. So the details over the Covington High School kids, those just fall out of their head because it doesn't have an impact on their everyday life. What they remember though is being really angry. They remember the feelings they had. So the next time something happens, the same headlines show up and it triggers a kind of response towards those initial emotions. So you ask the person to recollect how they felt before, not what actually happened before. And then they're going to have that same initial reaction. They're going to say, wait, this is more of this bad thing happening. And then, of course, the facts come out and it turns out completely different from what was initially thought, but they don't remember that. They don't see the the follow-up corrections. If they do see the corrections, they rewrite them or minimize them in their heads, or they just forget about the event and just remember that they were angry about some white kid yelling at a Native American when that literally never happened. That there was no white kid yelling or harassing a Native American. It did not happen. And we could talk about that because that's in the distant past, but it's the same thing with George Floyd. It's why I didn't want to talk about all the details with him right from the get-go. I'm like, I can tell you right now, everything's going to be different from how they're saying it is right now. It's going to be, everything's going to come out completely different. And I can't help but feel that the media chooses events like this that are going to be unclear because it will draw out the people that are going to say, wait a minute, it was different. They don't choose the obvious ones. The obvious ones are just like, it's like they never exist. It's the ones that are less obvious because I think the controversy creates a little bit more drama and division. But I knew that it was going to be completely different from how they said. And once we go through and there's a trial and stuff, you're going to have more people upset because the police officer's probably going to walk from the trial because all the evidence is going to point to the fact that, like, basically the charges against him can't really be true. And most of the people paying attention actually know that.
Yeah,
they're charging him for like first-degree murder or something. Like,
yeah, they bumped it to. I know they bumped it to second degree, which is second-degree murder is hell of a lot harder to
prove the manslaughter.
Intentional crime of passion.
Yeah,
it's harder to prove that than it is to say do a negligent homicide.
Yeah,
as in this guy screwed up and should not be stripped of that position and probably should do some jail time or probation, and what have you.
Even then, like, negligent homicide requires certain kinds of negligence, especially depending on what you're doing. I mean, it would be, a civil suit thing. I don't want to get into too big the details, but the point is that it wasn't what they initially showed. And so more details will come out by the time the trial happens, and you're going to end up having another Michael Brown thing where the police officer gets off of second-degree murder because it's really not second-degree murder. And then there's going to be more riots because people just remember how they felt. They didn't actually take in any additional information from what was happening with that. So that's problem. Anyway, that's also problem number 2. So problem number 1 with social media, from the social media's perspective, is how do you make money? You can't keep that core product going and make money. So the product has been it starts as a product that people like. Once you have that hegemon status and everybody's on Facebook, then you transform the product into something else. Twitter does the same thing. You don't get a chronological Twitter feed anymore.
Oh no.
It's really hard to find stuff on Twitter.
Barely get. This is why I very deliberately cultivate a list a list of like friends that's only about 100 people, because I know that I'm barely going to get half of what anybody of my friends is actually saying or posting anyways, if I go beyond that. Yeah,
they'll filter in stuff that's relevant. That's an important thing, is like people are a filter. And that's actually problem number 2 from the social media company's perspective, is information flows both ways. This is a problem not just from the social media's company's perspective, but really from the perspective of media in general, is that old media was used to putting out a broadcast or a newspaper and having virtually no feedback from it. Meaning nobody could, people could send letters to the editor telling them they were wrong, but nobody was posting like on their newspaper how the story was wrong. Whereas now, if somebody posts a news story, a bunch of people can comment about how it's incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a problem. So the people who run Facebook, and you have to remember that Facebook's run by people, and it's run by people of a certain, political inclination, let's say. And they're going to be upset about people being able to do this. This also goes against the core mission because, remember, people had fun sharing their pictures. Somebody shares a Huffington Post article and then they get a bunch of hate from all their right-wing friends, or vice versa. They post a Fox News article and all their left-wing friends start going off the handle about them and saying they're going to call CPS because they're in the children are in a fascist household, stuff like that. You get something that makes the experience bad. So it's like you have to do something to try to restrict that, keep people on the platform so that you can keep selling their attention to advertisers, which means that you're going to be inclined to disrupt the service further by banning people, by restricting who can and can't be on it, so that the narrative can flow in the way that you want it to, so that people aren't getting, quote, wrong information. You see this now if you go on Twitter and you post something like about 5G and coronavirus.
Oxygen frequency is the new one for whatever reason.
Yeah. So it's like, if you post that, then you're going to get this, like, get the facts about COVID-19 thing. They start saying, Facebook, you have to fact check this Babylon Bee article. It's like only an idiot doesn't realize this is satire. It's got a big photoshopped image of a dinosaur as the thumbnail, right? But the complaint is not that the Babylon Bee is posting fake news. It's that their opinion and the way that they're presenting it is convincing people to have wrongthink. That's the actual complaint. So when you understand that people are complaining about, they see, and the left started with the thing that they call fake news, which was jokes, right? Memes. They didn't like them because they convinced people of the truth rather than the opposite, which is, being able to keep people kind of pacified and consuming and always having the same perspective.
Yeah, it was the memes were convincing people to think and to step out of line. So they started passing around the term fake news, and then Trump turned it right back on them and torpedoed BuzzFeed in the middle of a freaking press conference. If everybody remembers that moment.
Yeah.
And they've never been the same since, which is hilarious. I see about 1/10 of the BuzzFeed shares that I used to from after that moment on Facebook. On other people, on my pet liberals walls. It's like not even there, going back to that now.
Yeah. So those are the two big problems from the core mission and service thing. And I guess problem, if you're going to pick a third problem out, it's that users do not share the opinion of the employees of the company. And the employees of the company are so numerous that they are also disconnected from the mission themselves. So the employees want to control all the speech while, like, say, throttling the they shouldn't throttle advertisers because that's money, right? It makes basic sense. But they're going to do it because it's more important to them that they control the narrative. So there's a problem there in that the employees care more about the political outcomes than the profitability of the corporation. In essence, they're converged. And once they get converged, then the company always loses sight of its core mission. Corporations can't really survive leftist convergence because the leftists will start to turn the resources of the corporation towards political ambitions rather than the core mission of the company. So over time, Facebook has transformed from a social media thing where people shared pictures of their pets into a platform that's directed specifically towards brainwashing people to be socialists. And I don't see any other way to view Facebook besides that. If you're just take a step back and look at it, what's the outcome? Is it just brainwashes people to be idiots? As far as I could tell. So that's probably the third one, is that dissonance between what's good for the company and what employees that are hired by the company actually want. It's employees that run the company. People forget that. Why would a company do something that doesn't make them money? It's because it's staffed with people that are paid a salary that get paid the same no matter how bad the company does. They have no particular incentive to enrich the stockholders. The stockholders actually don't have that much power because it's so diffuse. They can't really team up and fire the board of directors and clean house. Cleaning house is so expensive anyway. Once the company gets converged, it's really just how long does it take for it to implode and go away? And do you allow it to implode and go away, or do you use the government to maybe prop it up using monopoly laws and things like that? What happens to the converged company at that point? Do you get a bailout from the government and kick that can down the road a little bit? Because that's kind of what's happening with a lot of these companies. I don't know if you have any input on that. And I do want to get to chat in a second, guys.
Only that. Let's see, on convergence stuff, on the way that they'll sync company after company. It only a basic agreement. I see this happening time and time again, where they sync one platform then another, or they sync one company or whatever, and partly because they're not out there to make this thing survivable. But then again, that's almost something that they learn from. I mean, oddly enough, this is where the pigs become the people and the people become the pigs at the end of Animal Farm, because you see this behavior imitated in what's referred to as vulture capitalism.
Yeah.
It is everybody's looking for a hot IP to either become an employee of and converge, or to purchase and then break down and sell for parts.
Yeah, the so-called corporate raiding.
Yeah.
Corporate raiding, people have this memory of the 80s of having all these corporate raiders, but what that really was in the 80s was you had a lot of these old conglomerates that were sitting around, and a lot of smart people figured out that they'd do better as, like, you know, one company, if you broke it up into 5 little ones, it ends up being more profitable. That's why that's really how they made money, is they actually made money on the increase of value of breaking up companies, because a big conglomerate can lose all kinds of money in ways that you don't even realize. Like just having a human resources department now can cost you money.
Oh yeah.
And it used to be human resource departments was like, and this was back when my dad was in business, it was like 2 dudes who like hired and fired people for a huge company and like figured out, you know, did background checks on people and stuff like that. Now it's like a huge department full of people that are don't have any kind of profitability mission in mind.
Well, so the long game for HR is corporate CYA. This is why you get sat down X number of times per year for every little video of
sexual harassment,
culture respect, treating customers, whatever corporate compliance or federal compliance thing, whatever issue. Add to that so that's one side of HR right now, is because everybody's afraid of these companies will lose more money, they view, in the long run by getting sued.
Yeah, then by
being found liable, because even if this happens at the company, well, we had the videos, we had the meetings, we had this. So this person,
our corporate culture is against this. We trained people not to do it.
And I think that, and it's more of just these companies are afraid of getting sued into the dirt nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that goes all the way back to the 90s.
Oh yeah,
it was a huge thing in the 90s. There's these little talks on sexual harassment and stuff like that.
People saw the quick way to make a buck. It was stuff that you really didn't have to work hard to prove this. So it was very quick, very easy money. And when it did happen, it was, it could be pretty awful and whatnot. Although even then you could look back and shrug and say, are there these internal corporate cultures of jealousy and social climbing and whatnot? Because nowadays, instead of you'll rarely see the sexual harassment, but you will see a lot of social media harassment between employees. And now this is the other side of what human resources does, is keep these bickering, gossiping, drama-licious employees apart. Just try to pry these people apart every now and again, so the company runs smoothly, because you have so much conflict between personalities and ego. And I'm not sure if this came out of the 90s, but I think this very much became a bigger spike in problems with the lens of social media, that now everybody views themselves as being a camera, having a camera on them, and being part of their own TV show.
Yeah. You get a little endorphin rush when you get people paying attention to you. It's addictive. It can be very addictive.
Oh God, yeah. And the big warning is that the big warning was those Boomer and Gen X women that changed from calling things to soap operas to my stories.
Yeah,
that was going to be the person that was going to, if you believe yourself kind of like, if you're viewing yourself as kind of the part of the drama of this show, then you're probably going to want to import drama into your real life. And you have people that are like that. They view from television, or when they were raised on television, they kind of view the world through the lens of television. I think it's going to be worse now that we're going to have a generation of adults who view the world, their way of processing the world is through social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the next thing, so let me get to the chat real quick, and then I'll get over to area number 2, which is who's the product or what's the product. So, Shinyogo says, recently bought City of Silver, expecting it to arrive in a few days. Thank you for buying the book. I really appreciate it. Here it is, City of Silver. So that's part 1. You can get part 2 that just came out a little while ago. So that's Tyrant Scallo. It's a little bit longer. It's got some more humor in it, but you should definitely start with part 1. This is I don't know what to call it. It's fantasy, but there's guns in it. Maybe flintlock fantasy, but it's got a different flavor than probably most of that stuff that you're going to see. It also includes all of my fun stuff that I like to have, like maps and things like that. So if you're looking for a different kind of fantasy read, these are good. And number 3 probably later this year, as I get it edited. So just thought I'd do that. Thank you for buying that. Hardwick Bintho, what are your thoughts on Kursova's decision to declare the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America a terrorist organization for pledging support to Black Lives Matter? I fully support them for doing so. I personally would never join Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, especially now. If you had asked me 10 years ago, I'd been like, yeah, I'd probably like to join, back before I was really publishing stuff. But it has really turned into, and it's quite a hilarious thing that they are voicing support for Black Lives Matter, because the people who run the organization, it's like the worst. If it's a union, it's like the worst union in history. They don't do anything for authors. In fact, they do everything for publishers to get more money from authors and for authors to have less money. Anyway, yeah, it's run by a bunch of old white cat ladies that don't even know black people. They're like, yeah, the nice black boy who bagged my groceries, I care about him. It's like,
that's basically long and short of it. You can kind of always tell when somebody grew up kind of hood or not. and the old cat ladies, that are just live, laugh, love, or whatever,
Yeah, live, laugh, love. I cook pasta on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Tell you about my cats.
That type of lady that's currently running the Cat Rambo types that are currently running SIFWA. You could tell they grew up in the nice side of town,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the entire organization has really been dedicated towards trying to promote people based on their group membership and their group identity over anything good for the market or for the individual authors. So if you're like a white male author, why would you want to join an organization that hates you and wants you dead? There's no reason. They don't do anything for authors. Now, they used to. Now, pretty much all the stuff that is probably good on their website is stuff that you can look up for free, which is like maybe how to find an agent or something like that. But that's really old pub kind of stuff. And that information may very quickly become completely outdated and useless within the next few years. So at what point do you wonder, like, what is their core mission? And it's the same thing with Facebook. Like, the core mission of Science Fiction Writers of America, they added the fantasy part in. I don't remember when they added it in. They added it in to get more cat ladies into the organization. Because writing science fiction is something different than writing fantasy, to me. I'm sure we've talked about this in Pulp Rev before. It's like, really, fantasy is a subset of science fiction. if you want to look at it like that, or vice versa, they're the same thing. But they broadened the scope so they could pull in more people like them, and then take control of the organization and act against everybody else. And that's basically what happened. It got converged towards these white cat ladies.
Well, fantasy is a lot easier to write than science fiction, because there's no hard fantasy community that will try to break out the slide rules on whether or not your dragon used its fire breath properly, or if the heat ratio would the metal even if it was magically on a shield actually be able to repel the fire breath. It's like there's nobody's gonna do that to you. Science fiction has that hard sci-fi community that is like,
yes.
Well, the mass ratio for the hydrogen collection on your ship means those torpedoes should never been able to launch.
Yeah. Oh, no. There's people in the fantasy community who try to do the same thing, but with like medieval arms and armor. It's a whole thing now. Yeah, the
Weapons
it's
grognards,
the problem. Yeah, it used to be like, oh well, fantasy didn't have all of the nerds. And it's like, no, there's nerds in fantasy now. They're just maybe not as smart as the sci-fi nerds. I don't know. They don't know any kind of mass acceleration equations. They just know that, like, if he was actually armored like that, he wouldn't carry the longsword on his back. He'd carry it on his hip and blah 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 blah. Like stuff like that.
Admittedly,
like
I am tired of people carrying a katana on their back.
Yeah, I don't.
We saw this on Xena in the 90s, even though it was a cut away on how she did that, and so now we're all going to just write that into our books because it looked cool in a screenshot, or it'll look cool on the cover of a woman in a black leather jacket and black leather pants with a katana on her back, and this is the paranormal fantasy, the urban fantasy romance thing.
Yeah.
She's gonna date a vampire, and
yeah, that's basically. So anyway, they brought in an end to try to pull more people in. That's it's easier stuff to deal with, especially the way sci-fi's been. And the result was it got converged into this weird little cat lady organization that just doesn't do anything for writers. I can't think of a single benefit to joining the organization at all, other than maybe you could win a Nebula Award, but what's the point of the award? What's the point of the Nebula Award if it doesn't mean anything? If it's awarded
to an invite to the orgy at the Sci-Fi Con, because apparently now, years down the road, there's all these allegations coming out again.
Yeah, this is a good thing. I mean, this is a thing, right? Like, the people who are coming out the hardest with the Me Too stuff always turn out to be sex pests. The male feminists are always like sexual pesters that are
I've been to
creeps.
Sci-fi conventions over the years to know how creepy some of the nighttime activities can get.
Yeah.
So
I just don't go to conventions. I just don't do it. It's a simple like cost benefit thing, right? Like, if I spend money to go to a convention, how much benefit am I getting versus taking that money and just advertising with it? If I spent that money on advertising, I'd probably get a lot better return. That's kind of where I'm at now, especially like the fact that the convention's full of people who like hate me and want me dead. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the movie The Social Network? I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either, honestly.
Wasn't interested in it, personally.
Generally wasn't. I go to the movie theater for more of the roller coaster rides. So if people if the movie doesn't have big explosions, or
I won't go to the theater.
Something.
Yeah, it wasn't a movie about the drama of Facebook. Just didn't like the creation of the company of Facebook. Just didn't interest me. I don't like dramatizations of real people. Like, I don't like biopics very much. I'd rather just read their biography directly than see a dramatized, because ultimately the dramatized thing is fiction. It's just a fictional account. So I don't see a point in it. I'd rather watch something that's directed specifically towards fiction. So I never watched it. But Jared says he feels similar to the way my wife does on Facebook. I feel bad seeing people fight all the time. It's not fun. It's not. Did you know that Derek Chauvin personally knew George Floyd? I heard that. They worked at the same nightclub for about a year.
Yeah, that's the only
that's
tenuous connection that could get you towards a murder charge, is if that conspiracy theory about the place where they both worked at being like a front organized, having a front or having like a criminal activities in the back that both these guys might have been involved in.
Oh, I've seen like other conspiracy theorists that were like, yeah, at some point they injected him with fentanyl because he wouldn't have been able to be functioning with the amount of fentanyl he had in his system, or something like that. It was like, who injected him with fentanyl? Between what times did they inject him with fentanyl? I'm like, well, it's possible he had a stash and swallowed it and the balloon leaked. That seems like the most simple explanation. The popos are coming up and you have some drugs on you. This is a really common thing. Keep it in a balloon and you can swallow it or throw it away. It's probably, if you throw it away, then they're good. They look all around. They know how these guys do it. They're like, look all around. Like, here's the baggie of Coke that you threw away. That's not mine, officer. That was just there for some reason.
And now now they're bagging on George R. R. Martin in the chat, which is always good to pass.
Okay.
I like the Matsuri convention in Houston, Texas. Houston's kind of a weird town that has some weird problems I've noticed. Like back from the Gaming Gate days, there's like little things popping up there out of Houston, like the library that had the drag queen story hour, but one of them was a convicted sex offender, and and then twice that happens. Like, okay, Houston, what the hell is going on in that town? Speaking of Texas, though, I will be in Texas later this month for the Texas Haunters convention, which is
Cool.
is a whole different energy kind of convention. And it's going to be so far Midwest Haunters and Trans World were both canceled, so there's going to be like one of the few times that people can go in and buy live like the high quality props for Halloween.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Every convention is a different kind of energy, but the sci-fi fan, the lit sci-fi, I should say, are kind of the lowest tier energy now, because even before all this drama, which was oddly enough an injection of new life and energy into this fandom, it was the graying fandom. It was these like, you go from like talking panel discussions of this series of novels or that series of movies to how to deal with diabetes in fandom and what. It's like, that's your big warning sign.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man. I've seen some panel topics at conventions which are very damning of the community that they're for.
Yeah, I was just reminded of something. When the core, it's all about like the core mission. Once you lose sight of the core mission, it's like you're dying of cancer. It's like Vox Day's corporate cancer thing. Here's another thing too. Is like there's an actual Calvin Klein ad that features a horrendous looking
morbidly obese woman.
No, she's not a woman. She's it's a trans woman. It's a trans lesbian.
So it became the joke.
Yeah,
it literally became the joke.
They became the joke, and so it's like if you're trying to advertise to sell a lifestyle brand, you've lost track of your core mission with that, right? If you're putting somebody who is going to appear to be physically unattractive to 99.9% of people, probably physically attractive to physically unattractive to virtually everybody, even the people who are into trans women or something, right? Because there's people that are into that, but it's not like a hot trans woman. It's one that's made specifically to be unattractive. They chose this person for all of their category reasons: obese, black, trans woman, lesbian, but it's really a male that has taken a male that's attracted to females, that took hormones to look like whatever. I can't say he or she looks like a female. I can pull up the ad. I'm gonna pull it up just to.
Oh, I prefer not, man. This was such an odd arc for Calvin Klein, going in 25 years from heroin chic to ketamine freak. Just what the hell?
Let's take a look here. I'm gonna pull it up for you guys because it's because I love you guys, I think.
I mean, well, Calvin Klein has always kind of tried to sell themselves on controversy. I still always, because you can't exactly go, hey, our underpants are actually good quality, can you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's that. Here we go. So, bam. This is what she looks like, guys. Uh-huh. So she is. This is the ad. So I mean, if you see this is not something that would ever sell a beauty or a lifestyle brand. There's no possible way that the image of this person could sell a lifestyle brand. But here she is on a giant billboard.
It does sell a political stance.
Yeah.
So this will be virtual, but the thing is, you're trying to do virtual signaling salesmanship to people who are, against corporations to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's an odd Hail Mary for a bribe when you see like more competition in general, because I haven't seen an the comfortable underpants of the month club, but but you know what? There probably is one. I just haven't looked for it.
Yeah.
Look what Gillette has to do in the wake of like Harry's and Dollar Shave Club and whatnot.
First black trans queer icon, Jari Jones. All right. So I bring this up because it's a loss of the core mission of the product. This wouldn't exist without social media. It's a make-believe social circle where you think people actually want this because they're posting about it on Twitter or something like that. That's the other thing about social media is that it's
the illusion of numbers.
Yeah, it's an illusion. Yeah, it's an illusion of numbers. And
Twitter handles that are outright buying likes and followers.
Yeah.
You have 10,000 people following you supposedly, but there's zero engagement on your base tweets or your witty clapbacks.
Oh yeah. I've actually talked about this with some of there's a bunch of shiesty stuff that happens in the author world where there's all these accounts that have like 100,000 followers and they're following 100,000 people and they tweet and there's like 2 likes on their tweets. Well, there's like 2 people and those 2 likes are from 2 other accounts that person runs, so it's all an illusion of numbers and size, and none of it really matters. They aren't actually engaging anyone. So anyway, I thought I'd show that because it's just more what we're talking about. This wouldn't exist without social media. Let's get through some more chat here. The Mississippi flag was recently changed. It was the last state flag to have a Confederate battle flag in it. The Republican Civnat said that the world will now take us seriously. Like the world doesn't take the military hegemon seriously as it is. Fantasy Fan says he only had a Facebook account for 2 years before he had enough. Thankfully avoided Twitter. I deeply miss pre-Google YouTube.
Honestly, when it comes to Twitter, it's somebody said it best was Facebook is where you go to learn to hate your friends and relatives, and Twitter you go to make friends with complete strangers.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's actually a pretty witty one, and in my opinion, pretty true. I had another soda here. Here it is. I'm very clever, and I put my soda in like a insulated glass here. So
and also it's
Coke number
Twitter
2
because the anonymous nature of it has an edgier feel of a rugby scrum. This is what I always keep on saying when people talk about Parler or whatever, and there's now controversies about even this couple days old site Parler. Look at the terms of service. You have Nick Ricchito of Ricchito Log reading through the terms of service, even though they don't sound very much different from what I would on others existing sites, social media wise. Even if we send us your phone number so we can send you the code to unlock, to key into it, to a verification key. I've encountered dozens of websites that already do this all the time, whether it's my cable service or my or various sales tax websites and stuff for different states. Every state. You have to file taxes in separately if you do conventions. But you have Parler, you have Gab, and we're going to be the conservative free speech alternative. Yeah, but here's the thing: nobody's going to leave Twitter for this to go to people what they agree with when the joy is being in this rugby scrum.
Yeah, it's not just that. I'll get to that in point 4 and point 5. But I don't want to jump down too quick, but that's really what we're getting at here too, is that there's reasons why you're on these social networks. Let me grab a super chat real quick here from Sound Engraver. I do appreciate the $5. Hey, David, I can't say it, but definitely catch this later. Have a great stream. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sound Engraver. I'm trying my best.
Really appreciate it. All right, so let me get to this. Who is the product and what's the problem with this view? Because you've heard this, the product is the user. You're selling the attention of the user to advertisers. That's the way that you make the money. So the problem with this view is what we've been talking about, is that it's ultimately run by employees, and so YouTube loses money. How does YouTube lose money? Well, in actuality, it doesn't really lose money because it's part of a joint product. When people watch YouTube, they're generating user preferences for targeted advertising that follows them off the site that Google will end up making money on over the long run. Even though there's an operating expense from YouTube and direct revenue from YouTube, and YouTube loses money. They don't care about losing money with YouTube because they will make money other places, but also it's really not about the money in a lot of cases. Once employees really care about directing it towards some social goal or some political goal, that becomes what's important, and profit no longer matters. So the problem with the view of like, oh, we're just being monetized. It's true, but it's incomplete. And the complete side of it is you're monetized to the extent you can be monetized, but they will choose ideology over monetization every day, thus appealing to basic economic principles, or appealing to greed, appealing to the free market. It doesn't work on social media companies. It doesn't work on any converged company, and it never will. And that's why. It's because the employees don't really care about making the money. And really, why should they? Google, if you're working for Google, you have a pretty good idea that Google's not going anywhere anytime soon. You're going to get paid the same regardless. You might as well use your job to further what you consider your moral ambitions, which is to alter the discourse so that more people believe your side than the other side. So that's the problem with that. I don't know if you have any more responses to that.
I think it's an odd thing that, when people want to use this social media to convince people of one thing or another, but the thing is, the rest of your damn feed's still up. So you can post, so such and such politician is this and that and that. And here's an article, who decrying, person X, Y, and Z. But the flip side of that is I still see the rest of your feed. And when the rest of your feed is, I have severe anxiety issues, I couldn't even my depression is kicking up, I can't get out of bed, my this and that, is like, well, how much is your attempt to politically convince me of things, or the things that you are convinced of politically, just an expression of your individual mental illnesses or your mental condition? So you don't hear the worst at. So there's a lot of people I see on Facebook, especially, where I keep many of my pet liberals, as I like to call them. They're like a little aquarium for normies. Was it you that said that? It's like an aquarium where you keep your normies. Yes. Yeah, that was me. That was one of my. And yeah, because it's like, yeah, I have, thanks to all the things that you post, because people tend to do this, people on a train syndrome, like Aiden Paladin puts it, where they just, or as mentioned, people just share way too much on various social medias. Yeah. You kind of create the profile of you and see, maybe these are all just what are motivating, and maybe your beliefs or your stances aren't guided by reason. Yeah. Well, trying to get to disregard everything. Someone was telling me about some Australian guy who came out with a whole thing like, Facebook intentionally aggravates you and makes you feel anxious and bad, and then gives you advertisements for SSRIs, for antidepressants. It's you're constantly posting about how bad you feel, and so they show you more things that make you feel bad, and then they give you an ad for, I don't know. I don't even know what the current SSRIs are, like Zoloft or something. It may not even be one. Because they go through them. Like, there's new ones that come out every couple of years because they stop working after a while. So people that are on these SSRIs, they only work for a little while, and then they have to change their medication. Sorry. Anyway, okay, so there's that. Let's check some more chat. I'm going to try to head back up to the top. Oh, I missed the super chat from Derek Elder. $2. I would love to see a video on color theory one day. I've done some videos on how to use color theory. I'll talk a little bit about color theory this week when I talk about Spec Ops: The Line, because Spec Ops: The Line uses it heavily, and that's why it's aesthetically superior to something like The Last of Us 2. And that's something that I think if you were to approach it with an artist's eye, you'd see that something like The Last of Us 2 is not beautiful just because it's high fidelity. High fidelity and beauty are not the same things at all. Rather, the aesthetics that you choose can have a much bigger impact on somebody, even with a lower fidelity graphics, or lower polygon counts, whatever you want. I remember people geeking out over, like, one of the characters in a live rendered scene took his shirt off, and it was like the cloth moving was like realistic or something. And it's like, no one ever bothered to ask, like, why they should spend resources taking a shirt off realistic. Why does that matter? It doesn't. It's not an artistic statement.
to see a realistic shirt being removed from skin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. For some people, it's like just the tech of like, oh, how faithfully we can recreate reality,
Yeah.
or an imitation of a pale imitation of reality. It's like, yeah. But the thing is, the thing that's going to keep me returning day after day to level grind in a game like Apex Legends or something is the repeated fun. I don't exactly care about like the graphics, the connectivity connection, the internet connection only needs to work for my multiplayer, and the graphics only have to be able to be good enough for me to discern target A from ally B.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you can have great aesthetics without having to have extreme fidelity either. That's really the point. A really well-drawn 2D style that can run on a potato will look just as beautiful as perfectly rendered 3D, or it'll look better than a lot of perfectly rendered 3D if the objects they're rendering are just mundane. Like, highly detailed mundane objects doesn't really do that much.
That was the big complaint about the last generation of gaming consoles, was the amount of brown and gray in every video game.
Mm-hmm.
Was everything looked like drab.
That's
washed out.
That's something that if you go back and play Spec Ops: The Line, it is highly saturated. That it's part of its surreal. It's a surreal approach, but there's only two colors throughout most of the game, and it's yellow and teal, and they're really saturated. Everything's yellow or everything is teal. There's really no in between, and there's no browns or grays. Even though everything's sand, the sand is like a bright orange yellow. It's not brown. There's no browns in the game. It's saturated.
And meanwhile, it's like, oh, we can make everything look so damn realistic, but it's like.
I also think the same thing. Comparing the aesthetics of Witcher 2 to Witcher 3, Witcher 2 is superior.
I'm going through another rubble street. I'm bombed out area, war zone area.
I think that was the first thing I thought about Fallout 3 is I left the vault and I'm like, well, this looks boring.
Yeah,
and that was 10 years ago.
And back to the Halo games. One of the things that made them work was because you had these bright splashes of glowing blues and purple for the Covenant.
Yeah.
And then they added like these flame and even going into the more recent games with the Prometheans or whoever they are, the precursors. They're always represented by these big fiery oranges and steel colors, and then you've got the mundane olive drab and stuff, but a bit more shiny for the humans, the UNSC thing. So there's always these big is a wider color palette, and older first person shooters also tended to have a wide color palette because you're actually limited on the number of colors. You didn't have 5 million colors, and then you chose most of them to be variations of gray.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've got to make sure this thing is distinct from this other thing. Since I'm not in true 3D polygons, I'll make this wall blue, this wall red.
Yeah, Omar Dasa says, talk about anime. I just saw an awesome one about the dangers of relying too much on social media called Summer Wars. Now, this is not anime, but it reminds me of way back in 1999, Sonata Arctica, the first song on their first album, which was called Blank File, was about having fake friends on the internet. That was over 20 years ago. It's like this person knows you better than your real life people, but they're not real. They're not a real person.
And I've got people now trying in the chat trying to figure out who I really am.
Yeah.
Somebody,
it's not a woman, it's a man, baby.
No, somebody is saying I'm Brian Niemeyer. Somebody is saying that I'm Doomcock. I wish I had those two, Cloud.
Yeah. Mark, did you hear that Brie Larson recently started a YouTube channel? I heard that. I didn't care about hearing that, but I did hear that, or I did read it. Because the only stuff I really hear during the day is like, Daddy, I'm hungry. Daddy, can I have a cookie? That's the stuff I hear during the day. Or, Dada, hold me. So this is another, this kind of goes into is this social? Why should we care about a celebrity having a YouTube channel?
Yeah, they're already. Why do you care about a celebrity having a YouTube channel? They're already a celebrity.
Yeah, is her YouTube channel going to be special? It's just going to be Brie Larson. So what's special about that? You know, I have no feelings about it one way or the other. It's like she might be successful because she's already been in movies. Okay. Or maybe nobody likes to watch her, or maybe it becomes a meme because it's bad. You know, being able to be an actress on screen doesn't translate into good YouTube content.
Do you think Brie Larson is going to be doing anything as entertaining on YouTube as Randy Quaid? Do you think she's going to go full Randy Quaid? I don't think so. I don't think she has it in her.
I recently saw a Smirnoff vodka commercial featuring a drag queen. So this is a little, I don't know what to call it, a heuristic. Here's a heuristic. If somebody is advertising their product using, let's say, non-standard, or using anti-aesthetics, I'm going to call it anti-aesthetics, using ugliness, then that company probably shouldn't have your business, not because they are politically wrong, but because they don't care about their core product. I remember seeing a video after I had published my music through CD Baby of one of their employees, which was a dude with dreadlocks and a beard. They're from Seattle, so that's all you need to know. But wearing a frilly black dress, talking seriously about stuff, and I'm like, this is the face that you choose. You chose to put this face out for a video for your company. It says where your priorities are. Your priorities are not your product at that point. Your priorities are in these other things. And so that means if it comes down to it, who are you gonna look for the future? Somebody who's committed to having their product be the best and for putting their best foot forward, or someone who's committed to quote representation at the expense of their product? It's probably going to be the one who just cares about their product. Because there's no reason to advertise with anti-aesthetics other than to virtue signal. And if you're virtue signaling, it means you don't have virtue. That's the other thing, guys. People who virtue signal don't have virtue. That's why they virtue signal. If they had virtue, they would simply act with it and not spend all day on social media talking about their virtue of how, I don't know, how good they feel about some social cause, how important trans rights are to them as a white heterosexual cat lady in the Bay Area of California,
And then also on the other side, it's like that was a commercial for Smirnoff vodka. It's like if you're drinking vodka, your problem is you like garbage.
Yeah.
In general, it's a flavorless alcohol, man. Be an adult. Get some bourbon, damn you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let me get to some more. Do you think there's still a substantial audience for traditional epic fantasy that doesn't go out of its way to subvert tropes? From Jeremy Brown. I think there is, and I think that's the primary audience. It's the biggest audience, and it's the primary audience. The idea that the fantasy audience wants trope subversion or something is nonsense. The first person to do it is cool. The first person to subvert expectations is a cool guy because he's doing something cool and different. After that, you're not subverting anything. You're just
creating another expectation.
Yeah,
the thing that people don't understand about tropes is tropes exist for a reason. First reason is they're the Lego building blocks of stories. There's no good trope or bad trope. It's just a trope. It is a building block.
Yeah.
Now, how you construct the story out of your little building blocks is up to you. It's your skill and your imagination. The other side of this is, when it comes to tropes, is tropes exist over cliches because tropes ring true to they ring true to the social experience, which is why constant attempts to subvert really start to fall flat, because people can just then go outside and say, this doesn't reflect reality.
Yeah.
As I'm expecting it anyway.
Yeah, and then if you're going to subvert a trope by having, I don't know, let's say an anti-hero, right? We're going to have a hero that is actually a drug addict. Well, everyone starts doing that, and then after a while, it's just like, well, this entire little subgenre is just about drug addict heroes for some reason. It just becomes its own thing, its own subgenre, I guess, its own trope.
Like the cyberpunk genre kind of leans heavily into stuff like that to try to be edgy, and many of them are interested in subversion. But then many of the writers also end up becoming just complete corporate sellouts whenever they could, and
Yeah, exactly.
and most of the people that would resemble most of their protagonists are usually the biggest losers in your life that might launch into paranoid conspiracy theories based on no evidence, but will also be a useless drag instead of a protagonist.
Yeah. So traditional epic fantasy, if you look at what sells year after year over the long term, it's actually stuff like Lord of the Rings. It's stuff like Robert E. Howard. The truth is, the majority of the audience wants traditional epic fantasy. It doesn't want whatever, weird garbage. As bad as Wheel of Time is, it's not like some kind of subversion garbage fest, right? It's not edgy boy fantasy. It's pretty traditional in its approach to pretty much everything. So the audience really prefers the vast majority of the audience really prefers that.
Look at Game of Thrones. Even how far did that actually stray from trope? Not very far.
Yeah, not that far when you think about it.
It was about the second. It was about the I guess the third generation involved here. It was about the Stark children coming into their own. It wasn't about Ned to begin with. It wasn't about it wasn't about anybody who was over 30 at the beginning of that story to begin with. It was about the kids that would grow up to be the heroes.
Yeah. Well, and then just in general, it was always operating within normal fantasy tropes. What people think of as its cool, edgy stuff is it had like a bunch of sex and like gratuitous violence and kind of grimdark stuff in it, but that wasn't new either. I mean, that stuff's old at this point.
He wrote feast scenes better than he did sex scenes.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm not going to... I've only really read the first book, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there's a thing with certain fantasy authors that you can pick out like right away that I call it the virgin fantasy. It's like these dudes are really not experienced with women, and they write their fantasy of how they wish women thought of them. And I think it kind of comes across in that first Game of Thrones book. It really comes across if you read something like Name of the Wind. Name of the Wind is such a virgin fantasy garbage fest when you like dig into it. Every time there's a woman involved in any scene, it just makes you cringe if you've ever talked to a woman for more than about 20 minutes. Besides your mom and sister,
I'm going to have to look into this book then.
Yeah, Name of the Wind, I don't know, like the more it percolates in my mind, the more I think it's just I'm really confused as to why people liked it. And then I go look at numbers and I realize it's really not that many people who liked it. There's, the stuff that sells consistently, it was like a little mini hit for a year, and the stuff that sells consistently year after year is totally different from it. But it is still operating with regular epic fantasy tropes. It just has like this injection of a virgin fantasy where it's like, you meet this experienced older woman and you have sex with her. It's the best sex she ever had, and it's like this. It's like, no, this is so unrealistic. It's bizarre. It's clearly somebody having their fantasy about how they wished women thought and felt about them, that they don't actually feel that. You have to be careful about projecting yourself into a story that way.
Yeah, as opposed to virgins, but as Bradford Walker's put it, gamma male. That would be the term that John Del Ross would go to, right?
Yeah.
Gamma males.
Yeah, because I did this video called the Virgin versus Chad in literature, and that's what it is like the Virgin and the Chad are looking across at each other, and the Virgin characterizes the Chad with all these bad qualities, and you could smell it in the book. If there's an alpha, he's always like abusive towards women, and he's morally horrible, and there's no reason for him to be successful. Things like that. That's always one that gets you. It's like there's no reason that he's in power. No reason. People who get all the girls. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Also, God, that's also the bizarre thing, and that's why this is why the high school bully thing is not a trope. It's falling into cliche because, especially over the last 20 years, man, you've had so many anti-bullying campaigns and blah blah blah. It's like, does the white jock with hair, gelled up hair and the varsity jacket, being tough guy and punching people and to me, does did that act? I was a nerd in high school. That didn't reflect my reality of high school. It's like,
yeah,
you stole this guy and you turn him into every stock villain in horror and fantasy and science fiction, but he's based on like an 80s cliche.
Yeah, I think what it is these
you grew up with, not an actual person you grew up with.
Yeah, I think what these gammas do is they have a resentment towards the alpha, right? If you want to go like alpha, beta, delta, gamma, if you want to talk, we'll use those terms. Yeah. The gammas look at the alpha and they have resentment towards him, not because the alpha was particularly cruel to him, but because the alpha got things that the gamma wanted and it seemed unfair to him. And the alpha probably just didn't care about the gamma. It didn't acknowledge him, maybe made fun of him. But the truth is that the gamma sees any kind of joke that's cracked at his expense as something that's the equivalent of being stuffed into a locker or having your head stuffed into a toilet. So they kind of construct a reality where they're like horribly oppressed by the alphas and betas making fun of them. When in reality, if you've ever been mixed up with a group of especially teenage boys, insults kind of fly from all directions, you know. Everybody's kind of digging on each other. That's just kind of the way males work, and it's only a small subset that start to take things really personally and get very, emotionally harmed by it. And they're emotionally harmed by it because they're missing the other side of it, which is the actual male affection that is associated with that. So they get ribbed by the alphas and betas, but they're not friends with them, so they don't have any affection that they're receiving from him. So they're bullies. And so then the bully becomes, of course, the villain in every single story they tell. And usually the bully is like a caricature, because you need to paint the person who you're imagining in as evil a light as possible to make yourself feel good about yourself. You got to be really careful about projecting your own feelings into stories in that way, because it becomes obvious to those of us who've lived life and are kind of aware of storytelling tropes. You get into this stuff where it's like, oh, this bully is literally the most horrible person that's ever lived and is trying to carve his name into your belly. That was in a Stephen King book. I'm like, this is so bizarre. I mean, it's very frightening, but if you had put that in a slightly different context besides horror, that bully would have seemed it's like this person would be in jail at this point.
On to into the chat.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where was the Robert Frey? I was a nerd with a varsity jacket in high school. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Oh no, actually, I don't think I'm not sure if I had that.
It depends
jacket.
what you mean.
I don't think I was just willing to spend a couple $100 on a jacket when I already had one. But I was on my school swim team and myself. And also had one of my final classes was just a straight up weightlifting class, and hanging out with these guys and having that camaraderie and having fun, just like riding a bus out to a meet and whatever and just goofing off. Meanwhile, let's see.
So by the way, guys, general chat stuff, if you put @ and you put my name, I'm probably going to pay more attention to it. I'll probably try to find it.
Yeah, but in reality, I don't write erotica much anymore. Way too much sex scene can be really cringe. I'm trying to dive into a couple like harem series books and just to see what the writing in these new game lit things are like, and that's like another podcast worth of talk. Is this subgenre that's emerging now? I think a lot of people have lost the ability to write erotica even or sex scenes in books, and you see some people that just eschew them entirely now because of that, or people that will instead write them very badly.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're looking at a sex scene, there's kind of a risk assessment there, which is like, especially depending on what genre you're in. If you're in like say fantasy, there's people who absolutely don't want that.
I'll definitely want to read Raul Nyanzi's upcoming projects where he's saying he's trying to invoke the energy of the spicy tales, because I've read a couple of those old spicy books, and that almost seems like to be the perfect balance. Most modern writers will go very lazy and just say this female character had curves in all the right places. Meanwhile, but there's a much more fun, colorful language of sexy writing, or the spicy writing, where in these pulps they would have and you see a dip back into that in actually comedies like the Naked Gun series, where they talk about a woman's curves, then compare it to a dangerous road on a cliffside, and then make a more lampoon of even that cliche. But you see that old language of innuendos and stuff from the old movies and stuff, that these colorful double entendres.
A lot of that you can't get away with in 2020. It'd be too risky. You like look at it and be like, well, we could upset somebody.
Yeah,
then we'll have a Twitter storm
because it was such a fun style of writing. And we're at two variations of bland instead. I think the last great guy, I thought, Aaron Warner did a comic strip for several years out of Kalamazoo called The Adventures of Aaron, where he's kind of like this gamma loser. But he would always, the narration, whenever some woman, he would draw these women and he'd draw these friends and stuff into this comic book about his like semi-funny, semi-autobiographical life. But he would always have these ridiculously elaborate descriptions of a woman's attractiveness in the style of these old pulp novels. And then it would cut, and then the next panel would be him in real life, but not be able to spit out a word around her.
Yeah, it's a you write a scene in your head, and then it doesn't work out when you go up to the person. But this reminds me. So if you have problems talking with girls, this sounds really cheesy and bad, but have a script. Like, you could find one from like a pickup artist, basic script, which is like the first thing you say is this, follow up with this, get her to ask you a personal question, and then the point is to get past that awkward phase where you don't know what to say to the person to where you're just having an actual conversation with her. Okay, so that's the point of the script. The script isn't to like be a pickup artist, it's just to figure that out. So if you're having trouble approaching women, start with a script. It worked for me when I was young, could probably work for you. Start with a script and go with it from there, and then you'll end up in an actual conversation, and you don't need the script. Because the point is to stop being strangers. Anyway, I want to get to this question in chat because it's really interesting to me.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the concept of beauty as scientifically measurable? A computer tasked with finding the most mathematically beautiful face in the UK picked Florence Colgate. So I don't think beauty can be scientifically measurable in the way that we usually think of science. We usually think of science, we're taught to think of science that's not actually science. We're like, oh, peer-reviewed studies are science. They're actually not in a lot of cases. Most peer-reviewed research is false. And you could just Google that. You'll find peer-reviewed papers on how peer-reviewed research is false. The reality is that what makes beauty is not just mathematical proportions, but there's also a novelty element to beauty that can't really be quantifiable. So the fact that you see a woman and she has an interesting feature, that's why they call a mole a beauty mark. That is something that disturbs the normal symmetry and makes that person unique. That makes you pay attention to the person and find her more beautiful. So part of beauty is actually novelty, and novelty is something that can't really be understood by some mathematical means right now. It's something that's just outside of that for now as far as the way humans understand things. I did Google Florence Colgate. She's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. If you were to have that face and then maybe the face has slightly thicker eyebrows, you'd be looking at, oh, that person has thicker eyebrows, and then you might pay more attention to the face.
Or a weird gap in her teeth.
Something like that. And you think of these things as things which are flaws, but they often are. Or maybe the nose is a little proportionally too big, or she has an interesting eye color that's novel. Then you end up paying more attention to it and you think it's more beautiful. So I don't think it can be scientifically quantifiable.
Or something.
too intensely. But oddly enough, if I pick out a beautiful girl, and I've done this on the channel, and I put her up, here's a beautiful girl, everyone's like, she's beautiful. And she may be totally different than the last girl I put up. Different proportions, everything's different. But people, you know it when you see it. Any thoughts on people who say it's fiction, therefore the writer can do whatever they want without regard for logic? Depends. You can, but that doesn't mean that the audience is necessarily going to like it.
Yeah,
you're free to ignore logic. Some people want it though.
Monster girls are awesome. That's why they're super popular now. Novelty thing is the whole monster girl trope. Yeah, also the monster girl trope. A lot of the things that you'll see, like first of all, that's the inertia of playing D&D for 40 years and whatnot. Of that style of fantasy being on the market, but also having Japanese like to do the tons, the spirit of a thing. And then the third part of that would be also those can also represent a flaw, like a person who like a girl, like what are the unique quirky problems that a girl who is a lamia or a centaur is going to have in her daily life that will actually make her more not hot or beautiful, but more adorable. Someone that you can come to the rescue of because she has a problem fitting through doors or something, or she
I talked about this with the girl next door, right? I pick up a picture and the pose the girl is in is slightly awkward. Like her shoulders are a little bit, it's not like this like super sexy pose. Her shoulders are a little bit hunched, or she's kind of like leaning back and she looks a little awkward. Now a male sees that, and even though it's not directly targeting, it's like, here's sex, look at how sexy she is. You're attracted to that because she looks more real. She looks more vulnerable. She looks a little bit more like a person you'd actually talk to, more demure, more feminine in some ways because it's not as up in your face. It's a little more, the energy's a little bit more inward directed. All of those are things which can make a person more the subject for adoration, more adorable, as you said, rather than just beautiful.
The girl next door, you have the princess, and that's removed from the girl next door style girl, and the G&D is the one that the boy next door kind of hero is protagonist is like more likely to end up then with the princess. Even though the princess trope represents hypergamy in some ways, but the girl next door is also the relatability of this is the not only the attainable, but also this is the more personal. This is the one that knows you too and has known you probably like because of the implication of next door. I've probably known you for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's
familiar. The familiarity is part of it too. It's because it's familiar, you don't initially pay attention to it, and in the story you start to recognize the virtue of it. Anyway, let's hop on to, I wanted to talk about point number 3 with social media, because when we start talking about aesthetics all day long.
Sorry.
Technical monopoly. So I want to revisit this and get this back on track, because this is what I really want to talk about. I want to get through these last 3. The last 3: technical monopoly, hostile occupation, and what should normies do. So technical monopoly, this has to do with, if you're not familiar with the economic term technical monopoly, this is when consumers prefer to have one company or one thing rather than many different options. Best example is probably the road outside your house. You'd rather have one road in front of your house than 20 competing roads, because it doesn't make sense to have 20 competing roads. You don't want houses that far apart. You don't want to have to drive across a bunch of, there's not space for it. It's just bad. It's better to have one road and figure out how that monopoly on that one road is going to work. Do you, as neighbors, do you hire a company that does it? Do you hire the city? Does the city own the road and they're responsible for upkeep, right? So that's technical monopoly. Same thing with, say, power lines. You don't want to lay 40 sets of power lines from 40 different competing companies, because you have nothing but power lines everywhere. This is different from things which have a high degree of competition and options for consumers. So different grocery stores. There's a Vons, there's a Save Mart. They're across the street from each other, yet they're both busy because people go to different stores for different reasons. A technical monopoly is something that we should consider with social media. People going to Parler and cross-posting on Parler, it's nothing against Parler, but Twitter already exists. And people prefer to just go to one social media thing for that style of social media, not others. So if you start up a competitor to Facebook, you're going to wonder why nobody is leaving Facebook. And it's because they already have Facebook. They don't want to check 20 different social media accounts. They want to check one and have it be the product that they want. So everybody just ends up in one social media. It's a technical monopoly.
Until you actually have somebody who will do it in a novel way that does it better than the pre-existing, like Facebook supplanted MySpace.
Yeah, Facebook supplanted MySpace, and it's a total hegemon. You might not say it's a monopoly, but it's definitely a hegemon of what it does. So if I don't like Facebook, I actually have no alternative. And the reason I don't have an alternative is my friends are not on the alternative. The point of social media is that it has people on it. So any alternative which does not contain people or does not contain the people you care about is actually not a consumer alternative at all.
And when you're a writer or an artist like me and David and a lot of the other people in the Pulp Rev, it's, well, then where do we go to advertise? Well, we also don't like the convention climate, the convention community right now.
Yeah, it's gotten really hostile.
It's bizarre. Yeah. It's hostile. It's toxic. Even as just a little guy who draws stuff, I'm looking at the feeding frenzy of the Artists Alley. Like, you have like groups on Facebook like Artists Alley International. So many people are looking to imitate the charms or whatever little tchotchkes to sell that everybody else is doing. Very few people are going into their own IPs, or they're not willing to take the risk. A lot of people, the artists in this Artists Alley Network International web group on Facebook, are also, I'll see every spring or something, somebody posting, well, what's the new hot show that I can do fan art of? Because they want to glom onto something that's already established itself, and then rather than risk their own their own energy on their own creativity.
Yeah, I'll just mention I tend to think in the opposite direction personally.
And then there's this brawl to get slots in the limited space of an Artist Alley, though. Everybody is just like waiting for in 5 minutes and 45 seconds, it's going to go. This website for this anime convention is going to go live, and I gotta have this thing submit and try to get it in, and sometimes it's a first come first serve, at which point it's a feeding frenzy, or other times it's we're gonna be a juried show, which means that people are going to be trying to glad hand the hell out of the people running the Artists Alley. So talented or not, or product or not, they're going to get a slot in there to make money. And it's just really a bizarrely hyper competitive market group for so many avowed Bernie bros.
Yeah. So what Bradford Walker says, technical monopolies lead heavily on the network effect. This is why people only want one of a given network dependent thing. Exactly. So it's a standard. When you're looking at a network, you're looking at a standard. So imagine you went to the store and every clothes manufacturer had a different sizing system. Ooh. So it's like, this one is, these pants are 36 inches long, or these pants have a 36-inch inseam. This one is 1.2 cubits. This one is 150 centimeters or something, right? You'd get very quickly, you would be unable to do anything. So consumers prefer one standard, and social media often operates as a standard. That's why YouTube is the hegemon in the video space. People don't want to go to 20 different websites which may or may not work to try to find video content. They want to go to one that they know is going to work. Consumers prefer the one standard over many standards. It's why we have Android and we have iOS, and every other mobile operating system has been a failure. Whether it's Windows Phone or anything else, it's going to be a failure because people are looking at their Android phone or their iPhone and they're like, it's better to just have two choices instead of a billion. Because if you're a software maker, you really only have to deal with two different platforms. It's really easy. Everything's better if there's just one or two standards.
Look at fast food. It's like how many people will say McDonald's as a knee-jerk response, even though you don't. Who honestly likes their burgers or fries?
Yeah, I would say this. So you like McDonald's. All preferences are relative to what's available at the time. So if you are, and I think this was Nassim Taleb said this. He's like, the McDonald's in Milan was crowded and you could barely get in. Why was McDonald's in Milan crowded? It's because food safety is something that you can't count on in Milan. So people who are not from Milan were flocking to McDonald's and these American fast food eateries because, the hamburger is not the best hamburger you can get, but it's not going to make you sick either. You know what you're getting, you know what it's going to taste like, and you know that it's really unlikely to give you food poisoning. Whereas picking a random restaurant in Milan, you could get sick from it. That's the thing that happens, right? So it's all relative. You know, you eat McDonald's at the airport because it's the best available option compared to what's there. This is why people who say like, oh, well, why would you ever, no one should ever eat McDonald's because it's always garbage. It's like, if you're really hungry and you don't have any food with you and you're driving on the road, hell yeah, stop at McDonald's and eat there. You know, I like McDonald's compared to being hungry. Of course. It's awesome. You can go anywhere in the world and rely on McDeeds, Bradford says. I agree. Now, Darkspawn says technical monopoly equals no competition of diversity, optional productions, and utilities of consumer products. So technical monopoly is really when it's more efficient to have one. And the consumer really does better with one that actually does what they want. Now, having no diversity of or diversely optional productions. Let's say I'm gonna make a point here, right? Let's say that I can choose between MailChimp and MailerLite because I actually had to do this year. Now, I don't want to choose MailChimp because they deplatform people. I don't want to choose MailerLite though because they do the same thing. I have no actual diverse option. Both options are the same.
Yeah.
So that's another problem that we have with social media too. I don't like Twitter. Let's go to Parler. It's like, oh, their terms of service are the same.
Yeah.
It's not a diverse option.
They haven't kicked you yet.
You know, and it's just the same product. Same thing with Gab. Gab is just Twitter.
Yeah.
It's not a diverse product.
But Gab is also Twitter without the rugby scrum of Twitter.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. I think that's what makes Twitter fun, is that it's an open platform. Facebook is fun because it used to be fun because it was a more closed platform.
Platform? I wouldn't say a platform, more of a saloon brawl. People swinging from the chandeliers and the elbow drop onto somebody out of blue.
So, anyway, I bring up this technical monopoly argument because while people are getting banned, Stefan Molyneux was banned this week. So was Atheism is Unstoppable, and I don't really care for Atheism is Unstoppable. Apparently, it's not unstoppable, but I don't really care that much about his content. But it's just another person that got put on the chopping block. People are wondering why did these people get banned? The answer is because they told people things that are anathema to the current leftist dogma. That's it. Yeah. They're on the wrong side. People are like, oh, it's probably Stefan doing all that race realism stuff. Stefan talking about George Floyd against the narrative. That's what got it kicked off. It's not a specific thing. It's who you are and what you represent. That's why you got deplatformed. So that's something that, what's the recourse? You can't go to a competitor. Stefan Molyneux can't go onto another video website and do what he was doing on YouTube. It's impossible because the people aren't there. The viewers are on YouTube. That's why I'm still on YouTube. If I could have the same number of viewers off of YouTube, do you think I'd still be on YouTube? Wondering if I'm going to get banned this year? I probably will get banned this year. Do you think I'd be here? No, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be gone.
You get big enough, you make that risk.
Yeah,
especially if you're out of lockstep with the safe speech, with the safe tepid groupthink.
So I'm going to give you both options I'm going to give you all three options for what you do with technical monopoly. These are the options that Milton Friedman laid out in Capitalism and Freedom from 1961. So option number one is you do nothing. That's option number one. You don't regulate the monopoly. You don't nationalize it. You do nothing. Option number two would be you regulate the monopoly. Option number three would be the monopoly becomes owned by the government. And for him, the best option, he said, was actually option number one. And the reason is because over time, the competitive market delivers solutions to the monopoly problem. So what do you do with monopolies, including technical monopolies, over time? Do you regulate them or do you not regulate them? So his thing was for most monopolies, he said most, because he could conceive there might be a situation where you really do need to regulate a monopoly. that you don't regulate them because you want the full freedom of the market to work to produce the solution, and it will often in ways you don't see. So if the railroad had a monopoly on the railroads, the solution was actually trucks driving on the road. But because the railroad was actually regulated by the Interstate Commerce Commission, that Interstate Commerce Commission became used as a weapon against truckers to prevent them from competing with the trains. So it actually prevented the competitive solution that the market needed, which was a novel solution. Rather than hauling things over the rails, will drive over roads. And there's a bunch of advantages to doing that. Trucks are much more mobile than trains, obviously. So it's a different competitive solution. And nationalization is something that he didn't really break into, but I think you nationalize something only if it's something that's like essential for common defense. So like, neighborhood roads can be owned by the local government, right? It's a common item for literally everybody, and it'd be impossible to charge them entrance and exit fees for going on and off their little streets and things like that. I'll tell you that, like right now though, regulation of internet companies and of social media companies is something that Republicans really need to consider, because they are not in the position where they can use social media to their advantage. Only tangentially. It's really, Donald Trump is only allowed on Twitter because without him on Twitter, Twitter would probably have no users. It'd be so much worse off without him. They kind of have a problem. They hate him, but they can't just kick him off.
He's the biggest star on there right now.
It'd be the same thing. I think people at YouTube would love to ban PewDiePie, but he brings in so much cash that it's really hard to justify it. And it's only when you're that big is the greed argument really begin to have any kind of effect. But we should really consider what kind of regulations on a technical monopoly like social media should have, especially something like Facebook. That Facebook is something that there really is no competitive version of it. It's essential communication. It's the same as a phone line. It runs everything, chat, basic social media posts. People use Facebook to sign into other things. If you don't have access to Facebook, you could be at a severe disadvantage if you're kicked off Facebook.
In an era of quarantine, this is very much, the internet is very much a necessary non-option in advertisements if you are a small business, or keeping yourself afloat if you're a small business in interactivity with your customers. The virtual marketplace, and that's a big issue right now. And that's one of the reasons why the right wing has to lean into this.
Yeah, I think they've been way too like libertarian in their approach, and not thinking that like, is this something that actually not just for the good of themselves. Selfishly, they need to not get kicked off, but it's bad for people. If you get kicked off of Facebook as an individual, it could be a big problem. It's like being kicked off of. It's like having your phone service turned off because you said something bad over your phone.
Yeah.
No one would accept that as valid. But if you send a private message to someone over Facebook and it contains things which are bad, you could get banned from Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Think about that, the level of like draconian control they actually have over people. And because things have been so centralized under Facebook, I think you have to look at either breaking up the social media companies under some sort of antitrust, or you have to look at looking at them as a utility and regulate them. If they're a technical monopoly, I think you can justify regulation. If they're not a technical monopoly and just a monopoly, you just break them up into some constituent parts. You say, Facebook, you can't run private messaging anymore because that is the purview of a different company. Oh, super chat. Ace of Spades in Leet Speak. David, are you familiar with ElfQuest? I am not. And if so,
ElfQuest is like a classic, long-running indie comic series. Was going to be made into a animated series, or show dozens of times over the years.
Looking it up right now.
It's never exactly panned out. The creator, Wendy Pini, one of her famous asides is, I think, back in the late 70s, she dressed as Red Sonja, chainmail bikini and all. She cosplayed as for either a Dragon Con or a World Con or something.
Art looks good. It's got really, really bright colors. I'm looking at it now.
Neat art style. They're these small elf maybe they were aliens or something, and they ride wolves.
Yeah, it
And it's
doesn't look
basically
bad.
just kind of
I've just never read it before.
a fantasy romance soap opera-ish kind of thing, long running series. I never really got that into it myself. The only comic books that I read are still by are Fred Perry's Gold Digger, which is like 200, nearly 300 issues now. The guy draws like a machine. And Stan Sakai's Sagio Jimbo. I really liked that for the longest time. Um, I used to read a lot of the Anarch Press stuff, but I was never into Marvel or DC myself.
Yeah,
I
my favorite stuff was always like the fantasy comics. I always liked like Savage Sword of Conan, stuff like that. And I liked a lot of the stuff Dark Horse put out, but
I'm so sorry we got so off track.
yeah, it's okay.
But what was step 4 or aspect 4?
Hostile occupation. What should creators do? So this is the problem. You got to go to where the people are. So as a creator, you really don't have an option except to use social media or to not use social media. So if you're not going to use Facebook, there's no alternative to Facebook. So it's either you are committing to using Facebook or you're just not using it at all. Same thing with YouTube. If you're not doing YouTube, there's no point to doing any kind of video content whatsoever. None. There's no point. No one's going to watch it. So as a creator, this is often the criticism. If you think YouTube is so bad, why are you on YouTube? Because I want to talk to you. Because I like talking to people and I like sharing my work with them and I like having these conversations. I like using it. I like the product.
It's several $100s for me to get out to a convention.
Yeah.
I have to file taxes every time I do add this to my tax filings at the end of the year if I'm doing an art market or like one of those, because I've seen booksellers I've seen people selling books, writers selling books in meat space at like Art in the Park or whatever days, county festival or whatever, fairs and festivals. It's another thing that people take a risk on. Usually they'll prioritize local writers or in-state writers in genres, but even then you've got to try and elbow your way into a space there. There's an theoretically infinite amount of space online, which is why social media comes in handy for writers and artists.
Yeah, Bradford Walker says the problem applies to similar issues such as merch stores. Crypto fashion got deplatformed. I didn't know that. I don't know. I haven't kept up with that news. Favoring Teespring and Designed by Humans, and those are converged. Yeah, so it's the same thing. Like if I do Teespring, like you could probably see it on this video. If I go like look at it live, there'll be a bunch of T-shirt designs that I have, right? So you can buy like the Scipio T-shirt. You can buy there we go. Yeah, you can buy the Scipio Africanus shirt. You can buy, I don't know why it always shows the Scipio shirts, but they're cool. People like them. I've had a couple people buy the Scipio. If you want Scipio on a shirt, I sell that. So, it's down there. It's like integrated into it. I can just advertise that way. Otherwise, I have to give you like a crypto fashion link if I'm using them or something, and it's just a lot harder to sell it. Like it'd be really nice if I could just have a big banner like click this to buy my book.
And also Teespring also does very little regulation. Honestly, they will from certain voices of enough people complain, but you know what, there's so many people that are ripping off artists and stealing art and putting it on there. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. They only care if they get emails from people about how you're a bad person. Yeah, basically you're damned if you use social media and you're damned if you don't. So what should creators do? Creators should use social media. They should use hostile platforms, and they can use hostile platforms against the people who are hostile to them for as long as they want to. So you have two options really as a creator, which is because if you're going to use social media, and you probably should if you're trying to sell things or you're just trying to reach people, if you want to use social media, so choice number one, are you going to use social media or not? I guess you could try to be like the secluded author sending off manuscripts for TradPub. Good luck. For most of us, that's not an option. So you're going to do social media. Now, are you going to take the really safe route, or are you going to tell the truth? It's a question you have to ask. It's a question you have to answer. If you take the really safe route, chances are no one's going to pay any attention to you. They're not. You're going to have to advertise on the channels of the people who take the risks. So if you take risks, you also take the risk of having your channel get banned. My channel will probably get banned. I mean, 2020 is probably going to be the end of this channel on some capacity. So you just have to decide what route you're going to go. Now, I will say that there is a specific method that YouTube and other platformers use, but YouTube specifically uses to deplatform people, which is the first thing they do is they demonetize them. And the reason they demonetize them is that it makes the person go through a period where they don't have the income from what they're doing, and therefore they're financially vulnerable. So when you ban them, they don't have a war chest to fight YouTube legally or anyone else. So if you can remove their source of income, this is why Stefan Molyneux very wisely, at least he thought, was, I am not going to take any advertising money. I'm only going to take donations. That way, if they demonetize me, it doesn't do anything to me. And that's true. But they also did another thing where they reduced his views by 80%. And they did it to me too. My views went down by 80%. All of our views, if you were on the dissident right, even tangentially, including my channel, all our views went down 80% the same day, the same week, the same month. I talked to the other creators. I talked to all of these other people in this broader circle. It wasn't just Molyneux's channel. It was mine. It was all of them. All of them went down 80% last year within 1 week because they plugged it in. They decided that we were not going to be shown to people. They put some kind of qualitative value in the algorithm to reduce the spread of what you're doing. You'd had to manually go to Stefan's page to see a video. It never would suggest one to you. And so the point is to make them hurt. This is a strategy that defense lawyers will use if you're corporate defense. You will prolong the trial as long as possible before you settle with the plaintiff because they have bills that are racking up as the result of their injury, if it's like a tort. So their injury causes them to not work, and so they're racking up bills. They're hurting and hurting and hurting more, which makes the settlement offer seem more and more attractive the longer you go on. So when they finally do kick you off, you just don't have the money to fight them. You don't have the will to fight them. It's a demoralization thing. So that's what they do. That's why they do it. You are going to be in hostile territory no matter what. And if you think that you're going to avoid things by not being controversial, eventually there'll be something because the goalposts will continue to shift left until you find yourself on the other side of it. That's what happened to Atheism is Unstoppable. That's what's going to happen to Armored Skeptic. That's what's going to happen to all of the old atheist skeptics channels are probably going away this year because they're going to suddenly find themselves on the wrong side of the goalposts.
The goalposts keep on moving because, utopia is just one mass grave away. It's like wrong thinkers before we'll have everybody in locked up with the right think, whatever the right think is, and unfortunately, most of the people that are for that can't even find that. The other end of that is remember your meat space. Like I was mentioning, conventions and art fairs and whatever, just wherever you can find a market for yourself, go to those because the virtual click doesn't have as much impression on people also as a meat space handshake. It on a 5-minute chat with you in person at your table where you're signing autographs or you're and you're selling your wares. Conversely, that can also be as grading too, because there you as an artist, I can tell you I've definitely been in the trap behind my table for the 2-hour let me tell you about my 12th level paladin.
Yeah.
That's part of the magic of conventions,
Mm-hmm.
You can just pretend to be listening in a virtual space to that, but this person is right there in front of you otherwise.
Yeah. So having somebody, here's the other thing. It's not that's a real social interaction though. And I guess this gets to number 5. What should normies do? And my advice to normies is I think you have 2 options if you're a normal guy. I'm using normies broadly. I know no one watching this is like a blue-pilled normie. But like, your options are you need to go totally anon if possible, or you need to not use it. And the truth is, with Facebook, because it's not anon, you don't really need Facebook. And if you really have to have a Facebook, you can make one and just have no friends. It's just a Facebook, right? It's just like it's an account that's attached to an email to like manage logins for certain websites and stuff. You may need that. Okay. So normies don't need it because Facebook at this point doesn't perform its core mission. It's going to be there to agitate you and fill your feed with agitprop to make you upset and to try to brainwash you. So you don't need it. So normies don't need to be using social media. Now that goes against what I said about creators. Creators want to use social media because that's where the normies are. That's why I don't use Minds. It's why I deleted my Minds account. Besides the fact that I don't really trust Minds. It's that Minds is full of not normal people. It's not full of people that care anything about me. There's no audience to develop on Minds. The effort of developing an audience on Minds would be better spent developing an audience on an actual social media platform where I could get the attention of normal people. But if you're a normal person, you should really consider not using social media, especially Facebook. You should consider closing it. Now that's bad for creators, but it's better for everyone in the long run. At one point, we didn't have social media, and we were okay. We were okay without it. And it will force you to have different kinds of social interactions with people. Call them on the phone. Text them with your phone. Find them on a private forum where you knew them, right? Different kinds of things. Back before Facebook was a thing, we had guild forums and stuff for MMOs. Go back to those.
I think that's why people were liking Discord for a while, because Discord had the flavor of an old school IRC chat.
Yeah. Or an old what were an older forum, an image board or a forum board. And
don't forget to interact with random people like you would online in MeetSpace, though. Strike up those conversations. I was talking to some of the guys in the Pulp Rev group a while back about, just a couple of weeks ago. I was laid off. I decided to take a week road trip and just hitting up a bunch of the Great Plains states, Illinois and Kentucky and Missouri and Colorado and Utah, and then I looped back through Wyoming, Nebraska, and Iowa, and I just, I had a lot of great little interesting conversations. I was chatting almost past closing time with the people over at Small Civil War Cave, and that was a delightful tour they gave me. And but we were just talking about politics stuff. They're a Civil War Cave. One of the issues for them is how people react, the discussion online and stuff over the Confederate flag. Well, you know what? They sell Union flags. They sell Confederate flags, souvenirs.
Yeah, here's the other thing about having that face-to-face interaction with people. First of all, there's a lot of stuff communicated through the inflection of your voice, through your facial expressions as well. But people act differently when they're face-to-face. You would never say the things that people say to each other on Twitter. The things people say to me over the internet, they would never say to my face. They just wouldn't do it. They'd be terrified of getting clocked, right?
There's so many.
And it's not. I'm not even a violent guy. They just be like, "There's a risk." I wouldn't say that to his face. He'd get really mad at me. Who knows what he'll do?
So much of the Gamma Male fantasy line experience is summed up in that Dobson comic, where he's that cartoon blue bear coming to the rescue of a woman being.
Oh God, it's so cringy. I know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe I'll look it up.
A creeper photographer or something at a convention, and then you realize the reality was just him sitting like 50 yards away across the mostly empty convention space, and it's this gal who's goofing off with her boyfriend, the photographer, behind his table. She's on the other side. She's on one side of the table. He's on the other side of the table too, and he's snapping a racy photo of her.
Okay. I'll bring it up for people right now.
And so the reality is also, this guy was losing out to an alpha. She has her preference. She has who she's hanging out with.
Here it is.
And can't do anything about it.
Tell your girls to smile. Hey, quit it. I mean, this is just a total virgin fantasy.
Yeah.
Excuse me a second. Understood. Look at we use the drippy font. Help, a blue bear in a fedora is attacking me with a baseball bat. Sir, this 911 line is for emergencies, not prank phone calls. There's not really this is the attempt at the punchline here.
Yeah.
There's no real joke here. This is just him fantasizing about attacking somebody with a baseball bat, something he would never, ever do in real life.
The approval of a witness female, too.
The polite savage versus the rude civilized man. That's a Robert E. Howard quote.
And it's kind of funny thing of like there's not to be this gal in the ponytail, this redhead, who's approving of what he's doing. You know, this girl that doesn't exist though, to approve, to go to say yes, you're doing the good man right thing. It is a little that's part of the fantasy, is the validation.
Yeah, you're right. The validation is part of the fantasy. Like, she is approving of him. The orange-haired girl's approving of him using violence. And it's weird how quickly they fantasize about violence. I talked about this in The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby is it's a gamma fantasy. So what's in it is Gatsby is really a vehicle for Fitzgerald's own feelings about himself, both like positive and negative. Gatsby is somehow this gamma mobster. He's a mobster, but he doesn't act like one at all. In reality, to get that rich as a bootlegger, you have to be killing people, right? And he doesn't act that way at all. So there's a complete incongruity there. He's not a badass mobster. He's a total pathos for the character. And the main character is really the observer of everything that's going on. But you have this, who is it? The guy who's married to Daisy, Tom Buchanan. He has a mistress. He shows the main character's mistress. He like punches girls in the face. He's a caricature of men that Fitzgerald doesn't like. And then at the same time, Gatsby's a caricature of himself who he doesn't like.
and the thing is, it's because of media, the pervasive nature of media, people come away from movies and TV shows thinking that that's a reflection of real life.
Yeah. When it's really not
happening all the time. Every small village is Peyton Place or whatever.
Yeah.
As opposed to the reality, in which a drama is often a spike in a very placid, flat line.
All right. I want to get to something on BitChute before we go, because we're actually out of time. I want BitChute to succeed. The reason I don't talk that much about BitChute is BitChute's a great platform, but it is lacking something really critical that YouTube has, which is the ability to funnel users to content that they like. And that is really the value of YouTube as a creator and as a user, is that YouTube will go find videos for you that you like. And as a creator, YouTube will go find viewers that like your content. And BitChute just doesn't do that very well yet. It's not that they can't, but they're competing with Google, who's had years and years and $1 billion worth of investment in algorithmic technology to figure that out.
And also the widespread. I mean, are you going to be a home for a handful of vegetarians, or are you going to be a home for normies?
Yeah.
Because or even slightly eccentric normies, because I could find atheism is unstoppable on BitChute now. Do I really want to go looking for him, or I can also just watch a Townsend's video and watch a chat of a guy who's a reenactor of the 1700s, building a log cabin with his son. One website is attracting this kind of one group, but the other group already has an established presence in the other, and isn't going to be tossed out anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is like everyone going over to Parler that wasn't on the right is like, this is full of right-wing lunatics. Whatever. Yeah, they're the people wanting to get out of Twitter. It's always going to be full of the people who want to get away from the regular product first.
Yeah. And also the like weaponized nerd rage posting like it's some kind of own that, oh yeah, I got banned from Parlo already for posting cartoon boobs. It's like, so if that's what you value, and that maybe that's your part of the problem, man. you complain about you complain about comic book movies as your staple, and what is beyond in your part of your channel beyond that foundation. We might complain about media or something here, but I'm an artist. David is a writer. We have this as that's our foundation, not I'm going to be the guy who complains about things.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't want to be. I make a lot of content complaining about crap, and I have to keep it a minimum because it would be too much, But it's one of the ways that you attract people is with like negativity, or you have to be kind of risky. You have to be controversial. So anyway, we're at this place where what's good for normies is for them to check out, and that's bad for creators. But oh well, we have to. If a bunch of people just left Facebook and replaced it with nothing, something else would emerge that would attract their attention.
And be willing, and unfortunately, this is a problem that libertarians in the right wing often have, is because right wing doesn't value sci-fi, fantasy, or fiction as half as much as they value biographies. So it's very hard for anyone on the right to do the groundwork to get a convention going or something, meet space meetups going. But somebody has to at some point commit to the groundwork to doing that.
Yes.
Just so there are these meet space meetup, these places where people can focus and gather and glad hand and press the flesh and just interact socially in real life and know that there's this whole group, but it's an uphill, it's a severe uphill climb for conservatives in the fiction world, in genre fiction. As such, also I got a motor too, so I gotta get to work myself. My day job, my night shift.
Well, I appreciate you coming by and chatting with me, and it's good to have an artist perspective too.
Thanks.
I think maybe let's have you on another time. We'll just talk aesthetics, because we've been talking a lot about aesthetics lately. It's something people don't think about or understand. Like, we understand it on a base level, like instinctively, but it's hard to quantify like what makes something aesthetically pleasing or interesting compared to something else. Like we could have talked for another 2 hours just on fidelity and aesthetics and how you approach art and what you try to do to make art.
I'm Doomcock.
Yeah.
R1 Scorpio, B as in boy, AR,
right.
the number 1 Scorpio, SCORPIO. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on DeviantArt. You can find me on Patreon. You can find me on, of course, Kickstarter, where I have a Kickstarter right now, Dr. Atavism's Horrible Halloween Haunt coloring book. It looks like I got a couple more sales on it. So thanks for your support, guys. And I'm out.
All right. Yeah. All right. I appreciate it. And newest book is called Tyrant's Gallow. Of course, you can buy my book, Keys to Prolific Creativity. This is all on designing your creative process so you can get more crap done, actually complete projects and get them out. And before you buy this one, Tyrant's Gallow, you should probably buy first one, City of Silver. This I call 310 to Yuma, but fantasy. This one's more like Pirate Island, Adventures on Pirate Island. So you might like that one. And I appreciate everybody stopping by for the live stream. I really, really do. And I hope you guys will have a great day as well, or a great evening. Most of you, it's going to be evening time. So I appreciate it. And let me know what you think in the comments if you're watching this after the fact. If I didn't get to one of your chats, I'm sorry. Sometimes the conversations just kind of get going really fast. And I'll reiterate my 5 points. So core mission and service, that's been lost with social media. The who's the product? The product is you. You're having your attention sold to advertisers, but employees don't see it that way. They see your attention as something that they can exploit to alter your opinion, and that the landscape of social media should reflect their ideal intellectual landscape and their ideal social landscape. And so they use it to try to achieve that end in a very unrestricted sense. Technical monopoly. Social media companies do represent a technical monopoly. There's not a meaningful, diverse alternative because the point of a social media experience is that it's full of people. So if it's not full of the people that you want to see, then there's no alternative. And therefore, I think it's justifiable for especially Republicans to look at regulating who can and can't be banned off social media at the very least, and how social media operates. But that's still going to be in competition with how are they going to make money, right? Because they're already hurting their core product to try to make money. So I don't know how that can be resolved, but I think based on regular technical monopoly justifications, like regulating the phone company or the internet company or the power company, you could do the same for social media as a utility. Number 4, hostile occupation. What should creators do? They should operate, but if you're going to operate, you got to be aware that you're going to get banned eventually. So it's totally okay to use hostile environments because there is no alternative. So you're not doing anything bad by using Facebook if you think Facebook is bad, because there's no alternative. And you can always use that platform against the people that are against you. And number 5, what should normies do? They should avoid social media if possible. They don't really need it. And unless you need it, stay off of it. And if you can be anon, because that'll protect you as well. Social media is a liability in that if I have a friend that's left over on my giant Facebook friends list and they know I voted for Trump, they could call CPS on me because they don't like me, because they hate me and want me dead, even though I'm on their friends list. They just friended me for other reasons, like we met at a party or something. So anyway, that's that stuff. I think it's totally possible that I'll get banned this year because I'm on the wrong side of things. If that happens, and I just won't be doing YouTube content anymore. And I actually won't consider it that bad. Like, occasionally I do think about deleting the channel. This will surprise a lot of you that have hung out all the way to the end of this conversation. But occasionally I do consider deleting the channel. In fact, often I consider deleting the channel because it's a headache. It's a lot of trouble to keep up with. It's a lot of work to keep up with. There's not a lot of reward. The reward is random instead of predictable because of the way that the algorithms work and the way like the nature of viral media and stuff works. It can be very demoralizing to have lots of attention on content that I don't care about and no attention on content I do care about, like free audiobooks and stuff like that. It's a drain, and it's also a distraction from things that matter, like my family and my books. And so I kind of pulled back the last week or two to focus on the book. I've had other things get in the way, like cats having cancer. I got a cat with cancer, and we had an eye removed, and that's been a whole thing. Cat surgery, it's maybe not as big a deal as if the kid had surgery or something, but it's still big a deal. So I don't know. So I don't know what I'll do going forward. If I ever delete the channel, I have a Storycraft channel that I'll put more of my... It's basically just going to have stuff directed towards writing advice, and then there won't be any political stuff on it at all, and maybe that'll survive the purge, but we'll see. So anyway, it's what it is. I'll try to keep going as long as I can, and if eventually I get banned, if I'm not banned, it's simply because I'm not generating enough attention to get banned. I'm not generating enough. People are not watching me enough. If I had 500,000 subscribers plus, I'd probably be banned by now. That's just kind of how it is. Okay, and the thing is, people are like, I don't see why Atheism is Unstoppable got banned. He's on the wrong side. Somebody saw him as on the wrong side. That's why. It doesn't have to do with anything specific he said. Okay, that's the thing. People are not banned for specific offenses. They never will be. So people are like, you never say this specific thing that got this person banned. It doesn't matter. Okay, I said people should vote for Donald Trump back in 2016. That means I'll probably get banned this year, leading up to the election in 2020. Hodge twins will probably get banned because they're conservative. Doesn't matter that they're black. They're bad conservatives. Okay, so Hodge twins will probably get banned. Computing Forever will probably get banned this year. I might get banned. Rocket Mystery will probably get banned. Who else is probably going to get banned? Most of the skeptic channels run a pretty good risk of getting banned this year, unless they're leftist atheists. What a lot of the atheists are waking up to is that the left was never okay with them. They use them as a bludgeon against Christians because they don't like Christians. And then as soon as their time is up, they're going to be off. Count Dankula will probably get banned. So most of the channels that you really like that are more dissonant, that are clever or funny, they'll get banned eventually here. And probably this year because they're going to say something that's going to be perceived as supporting Donald Trump in some way or supporting the Republican in some way. That's what it is. Yeah, it doesn't matter if Atheism Unstoppable is a bad guy or not. It just has to do with his position, because they let jerks who are on the left stay around forever. That's just what they do. It's purely a political thing. And like I said, there's usually a process where they'll demonetize first. So if I get demonetized, then you know that that's what's coming next, is I'll get banned. So that's all. It's all part of the plan. And it's all on BitChute. All my stuff's on BitChute too. Pretty much all of it. And then I have a Storycraft channel that's got a lot of Storycraft stuff on it. That'll stay up. And if I get banned here, maybe I'll just only upload writing stuff on that channel. Razor Fist. Yeah, Razor Fist will probably get banned. You're right. Any of the edgy guys from the past are probably on the chopping block. So just be aware, there's more coming. And I really appreciate you watching this stream with me, though, and for hanging out with me. Really, really do. And I'll see you guys next time. I'll hopefully have another Storycraft video coming out tomorrow, and more stuff over the weekend. And so thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.